Welcome, my little couch potatoes, to the comfiest courtroom on the internet. I'm your host, Llama, and it's time for dramatic testimony, overruled objections, and absolutely unqualified opinions. So grab your snuggiest blanket, some delicious snacks, and get ready to watch court with your internet besties. This is Couch Court with Llama, after dark. Hello, my little couch potatoes. We're now at the end of week 5 of the USA versus Sean Diddy Combs trial, and there are no cameras or video allowed, but every news network around the world is there. And tonight we're going to go through the updates provided by the Washington Post and their team of journalists who are inside of the courtroom. Now, if you haven't yet, please like this video to appease the YouTube gods because they have been feisty this last week. And be sure to click the subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss when we go live or drop an episode. Now, tonight we're going to be covering days 22 and 23 of the Sean Diddy Combs federal sex trafficking trial in New York. So let's start with day 22. A federal employee is wiping down benches and screens and making sure the computers used for evidence are in order as we get ready for the 22nd day of Sean Combs' trial. Spectators are waiting to enter the courtroom. At the close of trial Wednesday, prosecutors said they would probably call their final witness sometime next week, at which point the defense gets its turn. The question on everyone's mind is whether the trial will run past the July 4th weekend. That will depend on how many witnesses Combs' team calls and how long the jury debates. And we are still expecting to hear from the judge about a juror who prosecutors claim was not forthcoming during the selection process and want thrown from the case. Combs' legal team has called this a thinly veiled effort to dismiss a Black juror. During the jury selection process, the 41-year-old man from the Bronx told lawyers that he worked at a correctional facility, read the New York Post and GQ, and was a fan of 90s hip-hop, reggaeton, and fantasy football. He also has a daughter. Sean Combs' defense requested time Wednesday to respond to the government's allegations. Now, at this point, court has begun, but the jury is not in the room yet. During an evidence discussion among the lawyers, we found out who recorded 2 phone calls between Sean Combs and Jane in the early days after Cassie Ventura's lawsuit was filed in November 2023. Guess who it was, guys? It was Combs himself. Smart, so smart. Ventura and Jane are both ex-girlfriends who accused Combs of abuse, with the latter using a court-approved alias to protect her privacy. During one of the calls, Assistant U.S. Attorney Maureen Comey said Combs asked Jane if she was recording it to, quote, throw her off the scent, end quote. This guy, idiot. During this conversation, Jane attempted to say that she felt like parts of Ventura's sex trafficking lawsuit captured word for word her own experience with Combs, but he kept cutting her off. The lead counsels have been invited to the judge's roving room once again. These conversations have been under seal, but we have clues about the subject matter. The last time this happened, the parties apparently discussed a juror the government would like kicked from the jury pool. On Wednesday, the judge gave the defense a day to respond to the government's allegations that the juror was not forthcoming. There was a lengthy back and forth Thursday morning about a note Jane wrote in late 2023, 1 or 2 sentences really, that the government wants to admit as evidence. Quote, I did feel forced and taken advantage of, Jane wrote in a notes app about her hotel nights or freak-offs with Sean Combs. I felt obligated 98% of the time. The defense has subtly suggested in its cross-examination of Combs' ex-lover that Jane may have been motivated to change her story to align with the government's case over fears she would also be charged with sex crimes. There's little basis for this assumption, though it may be something the defense teases out as it continues to question Jane, who is testifying under a pseudonym. Now, Assistant U.S. Attorney Maureen Comey has pressed the judge to allow the government to enter Jane's notes, which she said acted as a personal diary. And she wants to put it into evidence to refute the defense's argument. The note undercuts the idea that she changed her story or had a different understanding of her relationship with Combs before the government began investigating him. Defense attorney Alexandra Shapiro argued the message was unnecessary, noting that what matters is what Jane communicated to Mr. Combs. Now, the judge said he needed more time to consider the issue. Since the judge called both lead counsels into his room more than 30 minutes ago, the floor has been buzzing with activity. Attorneys have been coming in and out of the courtroom and huddling with their teams. Prosecutors and defense attorneys are ferrying phones and papers, and the lead counsels return to the courtroom briefly before disappearing again. The judge has been trying to keep this lengthy trial on a tight schedule. The fact that so much time has been dedicated to whatever was discussed in the roving room piques interest. Combs appears visibly upset. Oh no, so sad. Sean Combs was very animated during the court's extended break. It's unclear what was being discussed in the judge's roving room, but Combs did not appear pleased as his lawyers huddled to discuss the issue amongst themselves. Wearing a yellow sweater, Combs was seated as his stable of lawyers stood around him. He appeared to be talking passionately, gesticulating with his hands. At one point, he appeared to be tapping his fingers sequentially, as though counting out talking points. His lawyer stood, sober-faced and attentive as he spoke. The lead counsel and prosecutor, as well as Jane's attorney, have returned to the roving room to continue talking with the judge. At this point, the jury still hasn't entered the courtroom, and we are running an hour and a half behind. Whatever the court is discussing, it's no small matter. The two sides are back huddling amongst themselves. It's not clear when testimony will pick back up. Mark Agnifilio, Sean Combs' lead attorney, just made a Usain Bolt-style arm gesture in the courtroom. The other defense attorneys are laughing, and Combs himself cracked a smile. Prosecutors are huddled at the lectern, and the audiovisual engineer for the courthouse was called in to set up special headphones for lawyers to listen to evidence. It's a roller coaster on the courtroom floor, and no one is quite sure what has happened. The prosecution witness, known as Jane, is now returning to the stand, and the jury will be ushered into the courtroom soon. Testimony is starting nearly 2 hours behind schedule on Thursday, so Jane may be on the stand through at least part of the afternoon. While Jane is back on the stand, it's still unclear what was discussed during an extended conference. But Sean Combs' attorney, Mark Agnifilio, said he wanted to publicly name individuals, like a rapper, linked to a trip that Jane took to Las Vegas on January 18th and 19th, 2024. Now, we don't know this to be 100% true, but there's a rapper who showed up at court to support Diddy. And maybe that person is him, but let's see. Agnifilio claimed it could lead to new witnesses. Now, the judge, slightly annoyed, offered to clear the courtroom, but Agnifilio declined. Anyone who witnessed these events would be able to tell the defense if they wanted to, prosecutor Maureen Comey argued. The suggestion that they need to say these names is a pretense to harass and intimidate this witness. The judge ultimately denied Combs' request. And maybe that person showed up anyway to court. I'm just saying. So what's the solution? Sean Combs asked Jane in December 2023. According to audio, the defense entered into evidence this morning. Jane said the conversation took place after she had broken up with Combs in October over feeling exploited in their relationship because of freak-offs, which she said in text messages and phone calls that she did not enjoy. This was exacerbated by Cassie Venture's lawsuit filed in November of that year, which Jane felt mirrored her experiences word for word. What do you want me to do to make you feel better? Combs can be heard asking Jane. How can we get to a solution so we can move on? I don't want to make nobody feel like this. Sure, buddy. The defense wasn't able to name the very successful rapper Jane accompanied on a January 2024 trip to Las Vegas, but Sean Combs' lead attorney, Teeny Garagos, certainly seemed to try to drop a few clues about who he was. Garagos referred to him as a rapper that's very close to Mr. Combs and noted that the trip was connected to that musician's girlfriend's birthday. Moments later, the attorney referred to the rapper as an icon. Hmm. The trip with the musician and his girlfriend didn't relate to the charges Combs is facing. But months later, this trip would cause Combs considerable jealousy, per Jane's earlier testimony. Jane said she and the couple attended a hotel party where a male entertainer named Antoine was having public sex with another person. According to Jane, the rapper and his girlfriend asked her if she knew anybody else in the lifestyle. Jane said she wasn't sure why they asked her. Maybe they had an inclination that me and Sean had been doing similar things. Sean Combs' demeanor changed after Cassie Ventura sued him in November 2023 for physical and sexual abuse. After the lawsuit, Jane said that Combs was more affectionate and would regularly call her his girlfriend. I bet somebody was a little nervous. Defense lawyer Teeny Garagos is hoping to use this line of questioning to enter into evidence a phone call in which Combs lovingly expresses that he was not aware Jane was unhappy with the freak-offs. Okay. Jane testified that she thinks back to this time in their relationship fondly, but that she did not realize Combs was also surreptitiously recording their phone calls. Assistant U.S. Attorney Maureen Comey said earlier Thursday morning that Combs was baiting Jane into saying that she was not clear about her boundaries and the evidence should not be admitted. Now, there's a sidebar about whether or not the evidence can come into play. Before the court took a lengthy sidebar, it has been a day full of private lawyer talk, Jane was asked about her reaction to the video of Sean Combs attacking Cassie Ventura at the Intercontinental Hotel in 2016. Jane, who has been testifying under an alias to protect her identity, said that she was shocked by the video and that she helped come up with what to say afterwards. Jane also confirmed that Combs attempted to go into a rehab program, but was not allowed to answer a question about whether the program accepted him. Testimony has now continued. Jane is now being asked about a brutal June 2024 incident she previously described as a date night that turned violent, which lasted hours. Though Jane had said she instigated the fight, she alleges that Combs very quickly escalated it, chasing her through the house, kicking down doors, and leaving her with multiple injuries, including golf ball-sized welts on her forehead and a black eye. Afterwards, Combs allegedly forced her to participate in a freak-off. Defense attorney Teeny Garagos began the questioning by highlighting the magnum size of the champagne bottle they drank that day, which Garagos said was twice the size of a normal champagne bottle. Jane and Combs drank both champagne and tequila that day, she previously said. Jane said she felt a ball of emotions on June 18th, the night when Sean Combs allegedly beat her, then forced her to perform oral sex on a male entertainer. Sean Combs' ex-girlfriend confirmed that the argument began because she was upset about another woman she suspected Combs was seeing, a much younger woman. Jane confirmed that she called Combs a pedophile, though the woman was young but not actually underage, she clarified in earlier testimony. And Jane asked him, "Don't you think it's weird to date someone who can't buy their own alcohol?" Jane's anger wasn't solely about the other woman, she said under questioning by Combs' attorney. There was a lot of just resentment for so many things. It was a ball of emotions that night, Jane said. Now, the jurors are on lunch break, and just as it seemed the rest of the court would follow them, the judge held another sidebar with the lawyers, prosecution, defense, and witness Jane's attorney. They seem to be continuing the morning discussion about naming a rapper whom Jane accompanied on a trip in 2024. The judge originally suggested they had the discussion in the robing room as they had in the morning. Lead defense counsel Mark Agnifilio, however, objected. "I'm sorry, Judge, I prefer to do it in the presence of my client," he said, and thus the sidebar in the courtroom. The court has paused for lunch with no further clarification about what was discussed in the sidebar. The defense is setting up headphones for the jury, possibly so they can play voice messages as evidence. Since the audio may have details that could identify the witness testifying under a pseudonym, onlookers and the press won't be able to hear. Jane is back on the stand answering questions about a June 2024 incident when she alleged Sean Combs beat her after she punched him. After the fight, Jane has previously alleged Combs gave her ecstasy and ordered her to do a freak-off with an adult film star. Now, under cross-examination from Teeny Garagos, Jane confirmed that Combs asked why she attacked him. "We've never fought like this before, and now the Cassie Ventura lawsuit comes out, and now this happens?" Jane recalled him asking, "Now you want to attack me?" After the June 2024 fight with Sean Combs, Jane testified he forced her to perform oral sex on an adult film star named Antoine, who had previously performed in multiple freak-offs with the couple. Combs became upset, Jane said, when he learned that she had seen Antoine without his knowledge several months earlier at a hotel party in Las Vegas. Jane testified that she and Combs were on a break at the time of that trip, when she accompanied an unnamed rapper and the rapper's girlfriend to a hotel party where they saw Antoine having sex in public. What do they mean by having sex in public? Like, do they just mean like in a hotel room with other people? Or I don't know what they mean by that. When Combs learned of the trip, Jane recalled he exclaimed, "How could you go to another man's freak-off?" We're coming to the end of the defense team's cross-examination of Jane, whose testimony is crucial to the sex trafficking charges against Combs. Combs' attorney, Teeny Garagos, is zeroing in on the end of the couple's relationship, a period of breakups and link-ups spanning July through September 2024, the month of Combs' arrest. "My dumb ass thought if I fucked more and did more hotel freak-offs, I'll finally get a trip," Jane told Combs in one text, which Garagos read out loud. "I don't have anything post-worthy from our relationship," Jane complained in another message. Shortly afterward, Combs told Jane they should plan a trip. Teeny Garagos ended her cross-examination of Jane by retreading testimony about her last trips with Sean Combs, including time they spent together at the Four Seasons in Miami in July last year. Shortly after that trip, the pair had another freak-off with Paul, somewhat of a regular at the events whom Jane trusted. Garagos referred to Jane's previous statements that the freak-off was a love fest and felt less like a live performance and more like a fun group activity. The government is now preparing to question Jane one last time on redirect. Before Jane's last round of questioning, the lawyers once again debated whether a note she wrote on her phone in late 2023 can go into evidence. Quote, "I feel obligated 90% of the time," she wrote in reference to her freak-offs or hotel nights with Sean Combs and other men he wanted to watch her have sex with. The defense has argued that the evidence is not admissible. Prosecutor Maureen Comey contends the note has extraordinary probative value and is necessary to counter the defense suggestion that Jane's cross-examination that she was trying to shade her testimony to please the prosecution. Now, the judge plans to make a ruling on the issue after a break. And then they come back from the break, and the judge has denied the government's bid to submit into evidence the note that Jane wrote. The judge was sympathetic to the defense's argument that the sex trafficking lawsuit Cassie filed against Combs could have shaped Jane's statement, which would make it inadmissible. Now, Assistant U.S. Attorney Maureen Comey will now question Jane one more time. Comey gave a hammering and rapid redirect in one of the most intense exchanges of the Sean Combs trial thus far. Comey brought up a June 2022 exchange where Jane told Combs she was not really in the mood for a freak off, then added, "Don't want you to make you mad." Jane said it was typical for him to get upset in these circumstances. Comey then showed Jane an exchange she had never seen before between Combs and Paul, a participant in their hotel nights whom Jane trusted more than others. "I'm gonna need you to persuade her," Combs told Paul in a text message read aloud by Comey. "If she hears from you, we in." Okay. After that intense redirect of Jane from the prosecution, the defense is questioning Jane one more time in what is turning into a somewhat lengthy recross. Now, defense lawyer Garagos was more aggressive with Jane than usual during the witness's final round of questioning. She asked the witness at least 8 times whether Jane could have left her home during the violent argument with Sean Combs last year, pointing out that she had a car. The most compelling question came when Garagos asked about Jane's previously stated willingness to return the gifts and money Combs gave her if it meant she would never have participated in a freak-off. "You are not willing to give up your home, right?" the defense lawyer asked, referring to the Los Angeles home Combs paid rent for and still does, per Jane's testimony. "That's where me and my child live," Jane said. "That's a hard question for me." Before leaving the stand after 6 days of graphic and exhausting testimony, Jane made an unusual move. She hugged Assistant U.S. Attorney Maureen Comey on her way out of the room, but also stopped by the chair of defense attorney Tina Garagos, who had just finished grilling her for 3 days, and hugged her too. The witness, Jane, then walked out of the courtroom, her testimony finally done. Now that trial day is over, and on Friday, the government plans to call a federal agent, as well as Jonathan Perez, who worked as an assistant to Sean Combs when he was dating Jane between 2021 and 2024. With that, let's get into day 23. Court is now in session. With the jury not yet seated, the courtroom appears relatively empty as the lawyers go over Friday's upcoming testimony from Homeland Security Special Agent Andre Llama. The judge is also expected to weigh in on the dispute over a juror who the prosecution said was not forthcoming during the selection process. Sean Combs' legal team has called the prosecutor's complaints a thinly veiled effort to dismiss a Black juror. The defense is objecting to Homeland Security Agent Andre Lamone's expected testimony, which would include showing the jury firearms found in Sean Combs' security office during a search of his home. Defense attorney Mark Agnifilio said doing so runs the risk of being unduly prejudicial because Lamone was not present when the guns were initially located. The prosecution said this is not unusual. In Homeland Security searches, a specialized team first sweeps the premises to make sure it is safe, securing any guns they find. A search team, which Lamone would have been a part of, then goes in and inspects the evidence. A Homeland Security agent will be allowed to testify about the guns found in one of Sean Combs' mansions, the judge ruled. But the prosecution has to address the defense team's concerns by clarifying in their questioning that there was no signs of But the prosecution has to address the defense team's concerns by clarifying in their questioning that there was no sign of impropriety in how the guns were kept. "I want to know exactly where the guns were," defense attorney Mark Agnifilio said before the ruling. "I don't want to start playing Russian roulette with guns," he said, for quipping, "which is the way you play Russian roulette." Yes, I think we all know that, and that's a weird thing to say, but okay. It appears that the issue with one of the jurors, a 41-year-old correction officer from the Bronx, is rooted in conflicting remarks about his place of residence. Now, the judge said that his preference would be to talk to the juror and resolve any apparent inconsistencies. I think that is likely what we will hear will be a perfectly innocent explanation, the judge said. Defense attorney Alexandra Shapiro pushed back, saying she didn't believe the issue was that serious and that questioning the juror would lead to him feeling singled out and picked on. This is really harassing this juror, she added. The judge said he would think more on the issue, and if he thinks more inquiry is appropriate, it will be done after testimony concludes Friday. The judge pushed back strongly on the defense's suggestion that prosecutors are waging a thinly veiled effort to dismiss a Black juror. There's nothing here to suggest any biased reason of any kind, the judge said. He added that there was an inconsistency in the juror's answers to questions about where he lived, and it was absolutely fair and understandable that the government would raise that to the court. As the defense itself notes, this was an unusually diverse group of jurors that came in, the judge continued. We have a diverse jury regardless of what happens with this current application. One final detail from the morning exchange over a juror who gave inconsistent answers about where he lives. The defense attorney, Alexandra Shapiro, noted that Sean Combs was willing to waive the issue on appeal, meaning if he appeals the final outcome of his trial, he won't bring up the juror issue. Now, Combs, sitting at the defense table in a yellow sweater and white collar shirt, confirmed this. Waiving, Your Honor, he said, and waved to the judge. Now the prosecution has called its next witness Homeland Security Special Agent Andre Llama, who was involved in the federal raid on Combs' home in Los Angeles last year. The prosecution is methodically showing the jury some of the items found, including 6 small manila envelopes with the letter K written on them. They tested positive for ketamine. 3 cell phones, a plastic bag that tested positive for the drug MDMA, commonly known as ecstasy, a large cooler bag of baby oil, a closet full of baby oil, no surprise to any of us, and at least 18 retail-sized boxes of the lubricant Astroglide. Lamone estimated that the federal government seized 200 or so bottles of baby oil in total and 900 bottles of lubricants. That is excessive. Prosecutors showed photos of 6 firearms, including 2 Smith & Wesson M&P rifles, a Mossberg pump-action shotgun, a Ruger semi-automatic rifle, and a Glock pistol, all recovered by federal agents in a March 2024 raid on Sean Combs' Los Angeles mansion. One of the rifles had the serial number sanded or scratched off, Lamone testified. Agents also found ammunition, including a high-capacity drum magazine with 59 green-tip rounds. Lamone said the bullets are notable because they are manufactured to penetrate body armor better than normal ammunition. The firearms and ammunition seized from Sean Combs, including a high-capacity drum magazine and long gun with a defaced serial number, were all recovered from a security room in his Beverly Hills adjacent mansion. Defense attorney Mark Agnifilio noted during his cross-examination that Combs had a security service protecting his home. Photos from the search show a safe that was opened in that security room, large enough to hold the rifles that were recovered. Agnifilio is trying to suggest that agents had no idea where the guns were and that possibly the search was less than thorough. We don't know whether all these guns were in a safe or if they were splayed out, he said. Now, Agnifilio asked Homeland Security agent Andre Lamone whether he had ever recovered hundreds of bottles of baby oil and lubricant from other human trafficking or smuggling operations he was a part of, implying that baby oil and lubricant aren't hallmarks of a sex trafficking operation. It's only been in this one. Lamont answered. Buy Astroglide in bulk? That's what it looks like to you, Agnifilio asked, and noted that baby oil and lubricant were found in the house while all the guns were in the security room. Lamont looked at Agnifilio quizzically, then cut his eyes towards the jury box. A prosecutor asked the judge to remind Sean Combs that he should not be nodding his head during testimony he approves of. Nodding, especially emphatically, is not appropriate, Assistant U.S. Attorney Maureen Comey complained before a short break. Now, defense attorney Brian Steele stood up and said he had not noticed inappropriate behavior from his client, who sits at the same table. Last week, the judge sternly rebuked the defense because Combs was nodding his head and looking at the jury during his team's cross-examination of a witness who accused him of sexually assaulting her. This time, though, the judge allowed the nods. It's impossible to police every reaction, the judge said. Now, Ye, the controversial rapper formerly known as Kanye West, arrived at Sean Combs' sex trafficking trial Friday with the defendant's son, Christian King Combs. The rapper, dressed in white, was reportedly directed to the courtroom's overflow room. You know what's interesting? One could probably call Ye, aka Kanye West, an icon. Is that a good thing to maybe label him as? In regards to what we were talking about earlier about that mysterious rapper, I don't know for sure, but I'm just saying it's interesting that he showed up during all that testimony. But anyway, Ye has been publicly advocating for Combs' release from prison. He has also been in regular contact with Combs' family and is reportedly collaborating with Christian on an upcoming album. So a rapper that is very good friends with Sean Combs. Interesting. In a lawsuit filed last year, Ye's former assistant accused the rapper of drugging and sexually assaulting her at an event co-hosted by Sean Combs. Oh, wow. Representatives for Ye did not respond to a request for comment at the time. The extremely controversial rapper, formerly and better known as Kanye West, spent about 40 minutes at the courthouse where his friend's trial is taking place. But he did not make it into the courtroom and left the building. With the jury back in the courtroom and Ye, aka Kanye West, causing a stir outside, the government has called its next witness, Jonathan Perez. He is an assistant who worked for Sean Combs while he was dating Jane. Jane mentioned an assistant named Jonathan several times during her testimony. Now, Cassie and Combs called their group sex sessions freak-offs, and Jane and Combs called them hotel nights. According to Jonathan Perez, the former personal assistant to Combs, some of the staff who helped set the parties up called them king nights. So many names, jeez. Perez testified he and his co-workers had to make sure Combs was going to have everything he would need for 12 to 24 hours without having to bother anybody, which included liquor, music, food, drinks, and personal items such as lubricant and a special package of vital honey for enhancing a man's libido. Oh boy. In 2022, the Food and Drug Administration warned that vital honey contained a hidden amount of tadalafil, the active ingredient in a drug for erectile dysfunction. Ooh, guys, be careful about using this stuff. I have read horror stories on Reddit. The woman Sean Combs brought to the freak-offs, also known as hotel nights and king nights, were referred to by some of his staff as guests, former Combs assistant Jonathan Perez testified. Perez identified a woman who testified this week under the alias Jane as one of the guests. When asked to elaborate on what that meant, Perez said, a female friend, companion, I'm not sure exactly. The personal assistant said he was employed by Combs from December 2021 to September 2024, the month Combs was arrested on federal racketeering and sex trafficking charges. Jonathan Perez said he would use cash or a corporate credit card to buy supplies for Sean Combs' freak-offs from stores such as Target, CVS, and Amazon, whose founder, Jeff Bezos, owns the Washington Post, which is what we're reading from, as well as sex accessory shops. Well, Jeff Bezos doesn't own those. That was just in the list of places Jonathan Perez said he went, but I don't know. Maybe Bezos does. I don't know. The former Combs assistant said staff would have between 2 hours and 1 day's notice to set up the sex parties. Afterward, the room would be just a bit of a mess and in disarray, just like lots of sheets and towels and oils. Which, by the way, this tracks with the hotel manager's bleak assessment of Combs' tidiness earlier in the trial. Perez said staff would arrange a good meal, a massage for the tired-looking woman after each session, or an IV drip to put them to sleep. One of Sean Combs' videographers started screaming and freaking out in the defendant's private movie theater after he came across a video of Combs' girlfriend performing sex acts on another man in 2023. The videographer came across the video on an iPad typically used by the staff, Perez said. The girlfriend, now ex, was the same woman who testified against Combs earlier this week, aka Jane. Combs was visible in the background of the shot. Perez testified that he immediately told Combs and his chief of staff, Christina Courtroom, about the video and said he was told by Courtroom that he could have come to her only. Shortly afterwards, he said, Courtroom told him that someone outside the company had brought up the video in some capacity. The jury then heard a phone call recording in which Courtroom pressed Perez for details about who else may have seen the lewd video. Any housekeepers, the chef, anything? She asked. Perez testified that he failed to tell the chief of staff that an employee known as Chef K had been in the theater. I was just trying to diffuse it and kind of minimize it, I guess, the details, hoping it wasn't going to become a big thing, he said. His testimony will resume after a lunch break. Zoom, zoom. The court is back from lunch and hearing more testimony from Jonathan Perez. Perez is wearing a burgundy suit and a black shirt and tie. Before the break, he testified about staff being upset to discover a freak-off video involving Combs and Jane on an iPad. Perez is here because he was subpoenaed by the government. He has swiveled back and forth in the witness chair throughout his testimony. A Gucci pouch Sean Combs carried with him during King Nights, also known as freak-offs, would typically contain cash and drugs such as ketamine, Molly, and Adderall. Prosecutors showed 2 text exchanges between Perez and other members of Combs' staff. In one, a coworker told Perez to grab the Gucci bag and make sure nothing fell out. I zipped it up, he texted, no residue, and I didn't steal one Addy. In a group chat for Combs' assistants, Perez texted, I found items in the Balenciaga pouch that should never leave the Gucci pouch, adding a red heart emoji. Perez clarified in a follow-up text, cocaine. Jonathan Perez was asked by his boss, Sean Combs, or a coworker to obtain drugs a handful of times during his 3-year employment, including Xanax, cocaine, and Molly, the former testified Friday afternoon. He would procure these drugs from individuals by the name of Baby Girl and Guido, Perez said, and paid for them with cash from Combs' Gucci bag, security staff, or a top drawer. The government showed a text exchange in which Perez reached out to a security worker, confirming that he needed $700 for Guido. We heard in Jane's previous testimony that Jonathan Perez was the assistant who helped her set up date night with Sean Combs last year. That date devolved into an argument when Jane accused Combs of taking another woman with him on a trip to Wyoming. Does he live in Wyoming? I feel like he does. The couple then physically fought, Jane testified, after which Combs allegedly forced her to perform oral sex acts on another man in a freak-off. Perez said Combs called him on FaceTime during the calamitous date, his voice raised, looking angry and annoyed. The assistant also saw Jane, but she had her face turned away from the camera. According to her testimony, Combs had struck her repeatedly during the fight. It seemed like they had been arguing, Perez testified. Combs asked Perez to confirm whether another woman had gone with him to Wyoming. The assistant recalled, "I let him and Jane know there was not a female on the trip," he told the jury. Perez said he was told to pick up his boss, Combs, from a date night that went terribly wrong last year and bring a large sum of cash for Combs' girlfriend, Jane. Need $3,500 cash ASAP for his guest, Perez wrote in a text shown to the jury. "I'm going to take it to her." The account corroborates Jane's previous testimony that after Combs physically assaulted her, a fight she acknowledged she instigated, he called an adult film actor to her house for a freak-off. Jane said she protested and alleged that Combs made her let the man in, gave her an ecstasy pill, and ordered her to perform oral sex on the unwanted visitor. There was a lot going on personally for Mr. Combs, not a lot of communication about what was happening. Jonathan Perez told the jury of events in September when Sean Combs was arrested and Perez quit as his assistant. "I thought it was a good time to leap to hopefully avoid a situation like this," he said. Perez said he still feels great about his former boss, same way I felt when I was leaving my employment. He has noted he is testifying under subpoena against his wishes. He has also received an order of immunity in exchange for his honest testimony. He won't be charged for actions such as purchasing illicit drugs that he carried out for Combs. Now, Perez is being cross-examined by the defense. He agreed that setting up and cleaning hotel rooms for his boss's freak-offs were personal tasks, not professional ones. Okay. He confirmed he didn't think he was paid for doing them. "You deserve so much money for cleaning things up." Defense attorney Brian Steele suggested Perez did them because "you're a professional, you're courteous," and Perez agreed. Perez also told the defense that the events he described to prosecutors early in the afternoon, setting up freak-offs, obtaining drugs, managing a staff crisis when Combs' videographer stumbled across a group sex video, made up about 1% of the work Perez did for Sean Combs. Perez never saw Sean Combs strike a woman or anyone during his 3 years as the producer's assistant. Perez agreed with defense attorney Steele that Combs dated many women at the same time, but said he didn't hear Jane argue with his boss about other women. The defense tried to paint Jane as an extremely jealous woman who was less upset about her freak-offs with Combs than she was about his relationships with other women. Jane never seemed to be hesitant about participating in freak-offs or king nights, Sean Combs' former assistant Perez said of her. "Did she always appear to you that she was a willing participant?" Attorney Steele asked, and Perez said yes. "Did Jane appear to you in any way upset or unhappy after the king nights?" "No," Perez said. Perez concluded his testimony Friday afternoon after answering additional questions from the prosecution and defense. Assistant U.S. Attorney Madison Smizer homed in on answers Perez had given shortly before to the defense, in which he said that he felt that setting up hotel rooms for freak-offs and picking up drugs for Sean Combs were tasks that were personal in nature. Smizer asked whether his title was personal assistant or business assistant. The former, Perez confirmed. Did your job include doing personal things for Mr. Combs? Smizer asked, naming a few examples, such as writing cards, getting gifts, and buying flowers for Combs' girlfriends. Perez said yes. Perez additionally agreed that it was Combs' chief of staff who asked him to set up freak-offs or king nights, and that he did not believe he set those up for free and believed it was part of his job. Did you ever set up king nights on vacation? Smizer asked. No, Perez said. Now, the jury has been dismissed for the weekend, but court is still in session as they discuss an issue related to a juror. The judge told the court Friday afternoon that he plans to dismiss a juror who had given multiple inconsistent statements about his place of residence. The court is discussing the matter further, with multiple defense attorneys voicing concerns about the dismissal. See, during jury selection in May, a prospective juror gave a straightforward answer to a straightforward question. Where do you live and with whom? But juror number 6, a 41-year-old correction officer who said he lived with his fiance and daughter in the Bronx, may actually live in New Jersey. Okay, well, that's an issue. That's a whole different state. After the jury was excused for the weekend, the judge said juror number 6 told a jury service staffer that he recently moved to New Jersey. The juror also indicated that he stayed there most of the time. When questioned further by the court, the juror said that he was splitting his time between New Jersey and the Bronx, where he actually lived with his aunt. His daughter and girlfriend, he said, lived in New Jersey. According to the judge, the juror told the court that he still has a New York driver's license and all his bills go to the Bronx, so nothing has changed. The juror also appeared to have switched his answer from saying he lived in New Jersey most of the time to saying that he actually lived in the Bronx most days. There are serious questions about the juror's candor and the juror's ability to follow the court instructions, the judge said. The judge also questioned the ability of the juror to apply the law to the facts fairly. Removal of the juror is required, the judge said, before hearing additional arguments from the parties. Now, Sean Combs' defense team fought to keep a juror who had given multiple inconsistent statements about where he lives. Defense attorney Xavier Donaldson said he did not believe juror number 6's contradictory answers to be significant enough to warrant a dismissal, and that splitting time between New York and New Jersey was a very common thing among local residents. That's a good point. I think that a diverse jury is of paramount importance, Donaldson told the judge. The judge expressed his concern that a fair and impartial trial would be compromised if the juror remained. However, he did appear to leave some wiggle room to change his mind. If I think it's warranted to bring the juror back to have a discussion, I'll let you know, he said. Wow, that was a wild 2 days of court for the week 5 of Sean Diddy Combs' case. Oh boy, that's something. This is not looking good. This is not looking good for Sean Combs. And it sounds like next week we might be wrapping up. So fingers crossed they get it done before July 4th is all I'm hoping for. Now, Couch Potatoes, please leave some comments under this video letting me know what you think about all of this, because I cannot wait to hear it. We will be releasing these every night that court is in session, so if you've enjoyed our coverage, please hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss when any of our shows go live or upload. You can always find all of our Diddy coverage in our US versus Sean Diddy Combs playlist. Thank you all for being here with me, and until next time, go forth and be amazing. Bye.